I was the girl they ignored, the one no one believed in, until I owned the room they laughed in. Part 1. They called me worthless, not in so many words at first. It started with the silence, the sidelong glances when I tried to speak up at family dinners. But the words came eventually, clear and sharp like a knife, from my brother. "You'll never be anything but a disappointment, Jazz," he said, voice loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Why don't you just quit trying? You're a joke." Laughter spilled from my parents and cousins, filling the cramped kitchen with a cold, cruel sound. I forced my face to stay calm, swallowing the lump in my throat as the heat of humiliation burned in my cheeks. That night, I lay awake in my tiny bedroom, the thin walls barely muffling the city noise outside. The peeling wallpaper, the flickering light bulb, the worn-out mattress all whispered the same thing. I was trapped, a nobody, destined to stay small. Growing up in the East Side neighborhood wasn't easy. Poverty wasn't just a word, it was the air we breathed, heavy and suffocating. Food came in scraps, clothes were handed down twice or thrice, and the future was a dark cave with no light at the end. School was no escape. Teachers overlooked me, friends ignored me, and every rejection stung, layering over the last like a heavy coat of invisibility. But deep down, a fire smoldered. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe desperation. I refused to be the girl they wrote off. One day, I found myself drawn to the local community center, a rundown building with cracked windows but a promise of something better. There, a volunteer handed me a flyer for a free coding boot camp. "No experience needed," it said. I signed up, heart pounding with a mix of hope and fear. The first day was brutal. Surrounded by people who seemed to already know the language of computers, I felt lost. My fingers stumbled over the keyboard. The instructor's words swirled confusingly, but I stayed. Every night I practiced until my eyes ached. I watched YouTube tutorials, I read forums, I pushed through the frustration, the self-doubt. Meanwhile, at home, the words got harsher. "You're wasting your time," my brother sneered one evening. "You'll never get a real job." I clenched my jaw but didn't reply. Instead, I let my actions speak. Months passed, my skills grew. I built small projects, websites for local businesses. Word started to spread. Then came the chance I had been waiting for, a regional tech competition with a grand prize that could launch a startup. I worked nights crafting a prototype, an app to help low-income families find affordable childcare, something I knew from personal experience was desperately needed. On the day of the competition, nerves and adrenaline warred inside me. As I presented, I saw skeptical faces, raised eyebrows, but when I finished, the judges nodded thoughtfully. "Impressive work," one said, "especially given your background." I smiled, biting back the sting of pity disguised as praise. I didn't win first place, but I caught the eye of a mentor, a successful entrepreneur who saw potential beyond my past. He offered guidance and a small investment. It wasn't much, but it was everything. And as I left that hall, the echoes of my brother's laughter felt quieter, drowned out by the pounding of my own heartbeat. This was just the beginning. Part 2. The small investment from my mentor was a seed, fragile but full of promise. In a cramped, shared workspace with flickering fluorescent lights, I huddled over my laptop for hours, rewriting code, redesigning the app, chasing every detail until it felt right. My team was small, just 2 others who believed in the mission as much as I did. Nights were the hardest. When the office emptied and the city's hum softened, loneliness crept in. I'd scroll through social media and see faces from my old neighborhood living easy lives or indifferent to the struggles I fought every day. The ache of being left behind gnawed at me. The voice of my brother haunted my thoughts, a relentless echo. "You're worthless." Some days I nearly believed it. Bills piled up. Investors backed out last minute. The app crashed during a demo, and my heart sank in front of potential partners. I questioned every choice, every risk. One freezing night, I sat on the worn steps outside the workspace, shivering, stomach growling from skipped meals. Tears burned my eyes. I whispered into the cold air, "What if I'm wrong? What if I really am just a failure?" But then I thought of the families who'd told me the app had helped them. The single mother who found daycare for her kids, the elderly couple saved from isolation by connecting with neighbors. Their stories were my anchor. I wiped my tears and made a vow. I will not give up. The next morning, fueled by stubborn resolve, I pitched the app to every door I could knock on. I reached out to non-profits, local governments, anyone who would listen. Slowly, traction grew. A small city council agreed to pilot the app. User numbers climbed. Testimonials poured in. With each success, the weight of past doubts lifted. But success had its own battles. At my next family dinner, the atmosphere shifted. My brother's sneer was gone, replaced by a thinly veiled curiosity. "Jazz," he said, voice low, "I heard your app's making waves." I looked him in the eye, calm but unyielding. "It is." Mum gave a small smile. Dad remained silent, eyes averted. I felt the old hunger to prove myself flare up, but this time, it was different. I wasn't hungry for their approval. I was hungry for my own future. The app continued to grow, catching the attention of national media. One afternoon, I received a call that would change everything. An invitation to present at a major tech conference in front of investors from across the country. Standing backstage, heart pounding, I took a deep breath and reminded myself, you earned this. When I stepped onto the stage, the crowd hushed. I told my story, the poverty, the doubt, the relentless fight. I showed the impact of the app. And when the applause came, it was more than noise, it was validation. As I walked off stage, a group of investors approached with offers to fund and scale the project. I was no longer the girl whispered about as worthless. I was a force to be reckoned with. Part 3. The boardroom was a cathedral of glass and steel, echoing with the quiet hum of ambition. Suits murmured as I entered, some faces familiar, others new but equally important. I carried myself with a calm the little girl from that cold kitchen could never have imagined. Behind me stood my team, a diverse group of talented minds who believed in the mission as fiercely as I did. The investors shifted their weight, eyes sharp and calculating. "Miss Torres," the lead investor began, "your growth numbers are impressive, but what truly sets you apart?" I paused, letting the moment stretch. Then, voice steady, I said, "Because this isn't just a business to me, it's personal. I built this for the kids who never had a chance, the families left behind. I know what it means to be ignored." A murmur of approval. Then the door creaked open. The last person I expected, my brother. His face was drawn, eyes wide with disbelief. He looked at me, then at the crowd, then back at me. You did all this?" His voice cracked. The room went silent. I met his gaze, calm but resolute. "Yes, and I'm just getting started." He swallowed hard. My parents appeared behind him, their faces pale. I felt a rush of conflicting emotions, old wounds itching to reopen, but also a strange relief. The boy who called me worthless was staring at the woman who had built an empire from nothing. I remembered every cruel word, every laugh, every cold glance. But I didn't want revenge. I wanted recognition, not from them, but from myself. I nodded once firmly. "I forgive you," I said. "But more importantly, I forgive myself for ever needing your approval." There was no grand embrace, no tearful reunion, just the quiet understanding that I had won. Because the real victory was mine, the victory of rising, against every odds. As the meeting resumed and investors leaned in to discuss partnerships, I glanced at my brother one last time. He nodded slowly, a silent admission of respect. And in that moment, the girl who was called worthless finally felt free. The city lights glittered outside, promising endless possibilities, and I was ready to seize them all.